Welcome into my backyard. Today I'm going to take you back into the tiny house because we are going to start laying tile, or actually continue laying tile, in the shower and for the bathroom in the tiny house. So before I get started, let me just explain a few things, what I've done so far and how I'm going to proceed today. First thing I did is I came in the shower on this back wall and I laid the tile out to do a dry fit and test how they should be arranged on the back wall. Now, I could either start with a full piece on one side and then lay the tile out across the shower wall, and so I have a partial piece on the other side. Or I can start the first piece in the center of the tile and then lay them out towards both sides, so that I end up with roughly the same size cut piece on either side of the shower. Now, I decided on the latter because centering the tile creates a better line of sight. So I measured the width of the shower at the bottom, and then I measured it at the top so that I could see if they were the same, and of course they weren't. So I marked the center point on the bottom, and I marked the center point on a tile so that I could line the mark on the tile up with the center point on the wall. And this allowed me to mark either side of the outside edges of the first tile, so I knew where it should go. Then I took a level and plumbed a line up the center of the shower, making a mark midway and all the way up at the top of the shower. And this allowed me to measure the difference in width on either side of the center line all the way up. And that way I can tell exactly which wall is out and by how much. It ended up being that the outside wall, which is on the right side of the shower, was about 5/8 of an inch wider at the top of the wall than it was at the bottom. So next I took the mark on the left edge of the first tile and made a solid line all the way up the back wall to the top of the shower, and I'm going to use that line as my layout line for each row as I progress up the wall, just to make sure my center line there isn't wavy. Now, the horizontal line I made marks the top of each tile for my first row. Notice that the right corner is closer to that line than the left corner. This is all because the pan is not flat all the way across by design. It slopes towards the drain in the center so that water can shed toward the drain and it's never standing in one place. Now, I obviously can't do this with my 4-foot level because the shower is just a little bit a little bit smaller than 4 feet. But I'll just use my 2-foot level to create a level line that's just a little bit higher so that I can match the highest point of the pan. Now, I do want a grout joint along the full length of the shower at the bottom of this first row of tile. So I'm going to set the tile on top of some spacers and then mark the top of that right corner, which is the highest point on the pan. Then I just need to level across from that point and make my mark for my new level line across. So this is your tile trowel. These trowels have these ridges because as you're putting the thin set on the wall, you want it to have ridges and valleys. And this will create a section between the tile and the wall when you put the tile on that helps hold the tile in place while the mortar dries. Now, as I apply the mortar to the wall for the first coat, I want to make sure I don't go above that horizontal line I drew. When you're applying the mortar on a wall, you want to make sure that your ridges run horizontal. And that's because if they're vertical, tiles could actually slide down the wall. But when they're horizontal, they're less likely to slide down. That's enough explanation for now. I'm going to go ahead and get started and get this wall tiled. Now that I have the first row done, notice that this joint right here lines up with my vertical line, and then all my other pieces line up with that horizontal line. So I just got a couple small pieces for the end, and then I'm ready to keep going up. I am going to keep these joints straight with each other. I'm not going to stagger them like I did on the sidewall right here. They're just going to follow those lines straight up. So I'm just waiting for my daughter to cut me the small pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and keep going and laying tile here. Water, clean it off real good, and then we just gotta let it set until we can come back and grout it. But I was doing that over here on this wall,
And I pulled a couple of things out and one of the tile came with it. It was like this, it was too thin to really hold the tile, so when I pulled the things out, it just popped the tile too. But I have some mastic, which is kind of like, it's like mortar, but it's probably closer to glue. It's more elastic and stretchy. And I just slapped some mastic on the back of it. And then popped it back in. It's been fine. So there we go. All the tile is in. Now I just gotta let it set up. Then I can come back and grout everything. So what I've done here is I took all the spacers out. I let the thin set up for a couple hours. And then I took all the spacers out. And then just took a wet sponge to the wall. The thin set that was on the outside on the tile as I was putting it in, they get kind of messy, but even though it's dried partially, it still cleans up pretty easily. You let it set for 24 hours or more, it's a lot harder to clean off. So I like to come back after a couple hours, pull all the spacers, wipe all the tile down, and get everything ready for grouting. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a patterned tile. So it looks like a little better when I zoom in. And you can see with that texture in it, how that looks. There's up to the ceiling. Still gotta come back and grout. A little bit of caulking to do in my corners. But it's almost ready for the plumber to come back in and finish everything up. Notice the pan, there's a wider gap in the middle. That is actually by design. Because the pan is not exactly flat. It has to drain or slope towards the drain. And so when you put that foam insert in before we put the liner in order to line the pan, it wasn't exactly straight. And so that's why I end up with that big gap in the middle there. It's just because of the way it slopes. Notice it's a lot tighter at the ends, left side and right side. It's because they slope down towards the middle. And then even from that center point against the wall towards the drain right here, it slopes even more. And that's why really when you're putting in the tile for this pan, for any pan, when you're doing a custom tile job, you want to use as small of a section tile as you can. This stuff I put in, it has this fiberglass backing so that it kind of moves a little, but you want something that will adjust to the slope of the pan and everything else. What you end up with are gaps that are tighter. Some of them are tighter, like right here, then maybe back here. But that's expected in the pan area. So they're all flat and flush. They just, except for maybe a corner like this where it starts to really go in tight towards the drain. And honestly, I could have even used a smaller like pebble. They make these Riverstone ones with really small pebbles like this that fit in your pan, and those are even better. The smaller of a piece you can go here, the better when you're doing a pan like this. But these are 1-inch tiles, which is really about as big as you want to go. So this is on the bigger end. Notice when it slopes, the joints get tighter. When it goes out, the joints get bigger. So it's hard to get your joints exactly uniform in a pan, but on the walls, obviously I used the spacers and kept uniform sizes all the way around. I used a 3/8 inch spacer. Let me also show you on this curb the type of tile that I used. This is the same tile as on the two side walls. There's no edging tile. There's a type of tile called an edging tile. This tile does not come with an edging tile. So what you end up with this is a whole tile piece right here, is the edge is just that clay look. And if I were to do something like this on the top, that wouldn't look good. That clay edge there. And same thing if I came up like this and just butted the top into it, I would have a clay edge right here. It just doesn't look good. So what I did is I cut these on a 45, and then I'll come back and grout that in. Unfortunately, because I cut it on a 45, I have had to step in here. It looks like I got a chip here, a chip over here. So that's not great, but once I grout that in, it'll be a lot stronger. I shouldn't get any more chips, and it should look good all the way across here. So I'm just gonna finish cleaning up this pan. I'm gonna vacuum as much of this dry mortar out of here as I can, take the sponge through it, make sure nothing's stuck to it, and then just kind of work my way out and clean all this up. But I just wanted to show you all this on the video, the cleanup part of it, and I could grout as early as tomorrow, but my wife has not picked out the grout color that she wants, and so I still have to wait on her to pick out that color and then come back and grout. So it'll probably be next weekend when I grout. But grouting's really easy to get this done. I can do this whole shower in probably, from setup to clean up, probably a little over an hour maybe. So it's not going to take me very long to grout it. Then I can get the plumber back in here. Grout does take a little while to set up. You're going to give it minimum 6 hours. Really, because the plumber's going to be working in here, I want to give it like 24 hours. So if I did the grouting next Saturday, I'd probably bring the plumber in on Sunday to go ahead and finish all the fixtures and everything. So that's it for this one. I'll come back and show you the grouting just to wrap up this video. Alright, welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and grout the shower. Just want to go over what tools I'm using, how to mix the grout, that sort of thing. You should have already seen me in this video making the grout. And when you're adding water to your grout, it's very important to use as little water as possible. You can always add more, but once you've added too much, you can't take it away. So I just use my sponge. I try to wring it out just a little bit so I can control the quantities, and then just squeeze it in the grout, mix it a little, add a little more water as I need it, until I get the grout to the consistency that I need it at. So let me show you what the grout looks like right now. Alright, so here is my grout, and how easy that is to see. It's a very dark color, but you can see it's about the consistency of cake batter or maybe peanut butter, something like that. It's kind of thick, somewhere in there. You can adjust the thickness of your grout based on how wide the joints are, the grout joints are between your tile. The wider the grout joint, the thicker the grout you want. The thinner the joints, the thinner the grout. Also, there's a difference between what's called sanded and unsanded grout. And sanded grout is generally used with thicker grout joints, and unsanded is used with thinner grout joints because it's easier to get in and it's less prone to crack. Here's the type of grout I'm using today. This is a it is a sanded grout, but it uses a very fine sand, so it could be used in either situations where you would need a sanded or unsanded grout, a thinner or wider grout joint. It can be used in either one. This is a premium grout I'm using. And so if you look at my shower, I have my pan, which has a much thinner or narrower grout joint than my walls, which is a little bit thicker. So it's 3/8 on the walls, and it's probably a 1/4 inch on the pan. And because the pan is not perfectly level, it actually comes in at angles. There's a few areas where the grout joints are actually tighter. And that is why I want to use this type of grout that I'm using right now. As far as tools go, this is another important tool in the grouting. This is just water. And it looks gray because I rinsed off my mixing tool on the attachment for my that I use to mix my grout. I rinsed it off in this water, but it's going to get dirty anyways as I wipe the excess grout off of my tile. So I need a sponge to be able to do that, and so a sponge and a bucket of water. And then the last tool I'll need is what's called a grout float. That's what this is right here. It has kind of a hard plastic bottom, but there's a spongy inside area between the handle and the surface there. And basically I will put grout on this and then use this to kind of smush it into those grout joints as I'm applying it on the wall. So let me go ahead and give you a quick demonstration. And then, because it's such a small space, I'm going to go ahead and grout everything and let you see the finished product in the end. I've already grouted about half of the shower anyways, so it's kind of hard to see with this camera. If I zoom in here, you can see on this back wall there is a residue left by the grout when I put it in there, and that just rubs off. So you can come back, wipe most of the heavy stuff off, let everything dry, and then you can come back with a dry cloth and just knock all that dust off the tile and get them nice and clean. But you can see the grout joint in here. It's kind of a dark gray color. There's a few areas like here where I had a bubble. Yeah, so this is about as close as I can get, and it's really hard to see, but if you were standing in the room with me here, you'd see there's a bubble right here. There was a bubble inside the grout, and as it dries, it contracts, and then these bubbles get exposed, and that's what you're seeing right there. And so, yeah, but now you can see kind of the dusty residue, and I can just rub that off. I can take my sponge back over this as well and just clean that off a little bit. And I'll have to go over this multiple times to get it clean. Grouting is a messy job, but that's how you do it. So let me show you how to actually grout the tile. Let me move the camera here. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to set my grout bucket in here, and basically what I want to do is take some of this grout, just go ahead and put it on my grout float like this, And then you're just trying to basically smush it into your grout joint. So I can kind of smush it in like this. Don't worry about getting it on the tile because we're going to clean all of that up. But you just kind of smear it and then you come back over it like this. Smush it in another joint, spread it out. Try to get it everywhere if you can. Just like that. Get some over here and this side over here. And you'll be able to tell how well it's packed in there as you look at it. Sometimes you miss the air bubbles, but that's why it's important to really, really pack it in there good. And then you just keep going like that all the way around. Everywhere you have empty joints, you just keep going. You can even scrape that off and resituate the grout here on your grout float, so it's easier to get in some of these joint areas. Just come across it all like that. And then, normally I would do more surface area than what I've done already. However, in the spirit of showing you how this is all done, once you've done kind of a large area, the next thing you want to do is just clean it up a little. So, I'll take my sponge. And that's why too you want to use their float to try to scrape as much of the excess off as you can, because we're going to come back with the sponge. We're just going to wipe everything down real good like this. It takes multiple wipe downs to really get this grouted area clean. So you just got to be patient with it, keep going over it as many times as you need to. You're not going to get it perfectly clean right away. Sometimes you have to let it dry a little bit before you go back over it again, like I showed you on that back tile earlier. So, and this also helps pack in the grout a little bit more and smooths it out so it has a nice clean finish look to it. We just keep rinsing off our sponge. Going back over it. Obviously I'm using dirty water here, so at some point I'm going to want to go get a clean bucket of water and then come back over everything again. So that's all there is to it. So let me go ahead and finish all this up. I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Alright, I am all done grouting the shower. I'll go ahead and give you some zoomed in images. I had to grout all the way up against the ceiling here because I ran the tile all the way up. So you can see that all the way around. And then as we come down, I did not grout in around where the shower comes out because I'll have a little plate that goes over that and I'll caulk around that against the tile so no water leaks in. So that should be fine. Even though I will also have that around where this handle is, I did go ahead and put some grout in there. I had some thick grout that was setting up way too fast and I was trying to use it as quick as I could, and because it was getting pretty solid, I thought I could, and that's a really big gap in there, I thought I could go ahead and shove some in there. And it seemed to work pretty good. I came back later with another batch I mixed up and went over the top of it, and it's filled it in pretty good, so I'm happy with it. Yeah, and then everything else is just peach keen. Pan is all done, the curb is all done. I put some tape right on the floor edge there so that I could do those vertical grout joints going down to the floor, and I'll come back with a bead of caulk and just hit that edge right there again with some caulk, finish that off real nice. So that is it. Now I just need to get the plumber in here. He's coming in a couple days. Connect all the fixtures. My next step is to go ahead and hang the mirror, as you see right here, and some towel racks, hooks, all sitting over there on the washer. There's the shower heads above the washer, but plumber will take care of that. So I'm gonna put in all the towel racks and hooks and everything, and then of course I still have to wipe out the shower. You can just see on the camera the grit from the grout on those white tiles. All that will get cleaned up real nice and it'll look real sharp when I'm done. So thanks for watching. I'll give you a quick tour after everything else is done.